To hold a public meeting for consideration of zoning bylaw amendment application Z0719 for the Rotary Club of Owen Sound located at 339639 Presqu'île Road, Camp Presqu'île. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, I throw a hands. All in favor? The motion is carried. Now I'll move to my other script. I would like to call this public meeting to order. This meeting has been called for the purpose of considering an application for proposed zoning bylaw amendment application Z0719 for the Rotary Club of Owen Sound for property located at 339639 Presqu'île Road. Would the clerk please advise those present as to the method by which the notice of this meeting was given? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property, by email to all prescribed bodies on June 15th, 2021, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would the planner please explain the purpose and effect of the proposed application and whether any correspondence have been received to date? Madam Planner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of the application is to permit Camp Presqu'île to obtain a building permit for a kitchen addition. In order to do this, the property needs to be brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw. The effect of the application will be to rezone the lands to institutional zone with exceptions to recognize a reduced side yard setback, permit development on a lot that does not have frontage and direct access to an open and maintained road, recognize a realigned EP zone and an EP environmental protection special zone with a 0-meter setback, and to recognize deemed lots as a lot of record. So a public meeting for this application was held on May 8th in 2019, and the decision on the application was deferred pending the submission of a survey showing the 100-year flood line at elevation 177.9 meters, and then confirmation of the location of the existing structures within that floodline area. So that information was provided to the Grace Level Conservation Authority, and they reviewed the information with the result in a recommendation to realign the environmental protection zone, to rezone a portion of the property environmental protection special, which is a setback to that EP zone, and to reduce the setback to the actual EP special zone to 0 meters. So since the public meeting in 2019, we have seen a change in the provincial policy statement. It's now the PPS 2020. The County of Grey adopted a new official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs passed a new zoning bylaw. So given that we had significant policy document changes, that warrants a second public meeting to consider the application under the current legislation. So as you can see from the planning report, the policy review indicates that the proposal meets the applicable policies of the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, the County of Grey Official Plan, and the intent of the Township's zoning bylaw. The county, I won't go into great detail because there is a policy review in the report before you. But I would just highlight that the County OP designates the subject property as hazard and inland lake and shoreline. The inland lake and shoreline designation does permit resource-based recreation uses, which does include water-based recreation, campgrounds, and lodges and resorts. The property is currently operating as a camp and would be considered a permitted use under the county official plan. And we don't generally permit development in a hazard designation. So west of the Presqu'île Road, there's the property extends on the other side of Presqu'île Road as well, and there are significant woodlands there, but there's no development proposed for that area of the property. The Conservation Authority did review the application and the submitted survey, and they're supportive of the building addition, and they support a 0-meter setback for that kitchen addition to the main hall. Right now, that property is zoned shoreline residential, and it permits residential uses. The proposal to rezone the property to institutional will permit the camp to continue to operate and comply with the zoning bylaw. A private club is permitted under the institutional zone, and it would cover Camp Presqu'île as it's a nonprofit operation. The institutional zoning for a camp does comply with the county official plan designation, and it would meet the intent of the permitted uses in the institutional zone. So the amending bylaw is going to be fairly detailed and will implement a special environmental protections, what we'll call a 17, exception 17, with zone with a 0-meter setback as recommended by the Conservation Authority. In the package that in the agenda package, there is a schedule there that shows the environmental protection zone and the EP 17 zone. That's the draft bylaw schedule that you will see next week for the your consideration along with the site-specific amending bylaw. So no new structures are going to be permitted within any of the EP or EP 17 zones. And the structures that are there are permitted to remain. However, if any of them are destroyed by flood, they cannot be rebuilt unless there's a coastal engineer's report that supports rebuilding in that location. So no new development is permitted typically within an EP zone, and that will remain the case for this property. So with the application, a deeming bylaw was submitted, but I've been in contact with the applicant, and we're making sure that the legal descriptions to be included in the bylaw are correct. So there's no deeming bylaw for council to be considered at this time. That will be submitted at a later date pending the confirmation of those legal descriptions. So we did recirculate this application to all of the agencies. The comments that came back from the county and the Conservation Authority just really reiterated their previous comments. So they're provided the EP zoning was amended, the Conservation Authority was supportive of the application. The Historic Sage Métis and the Risk Management Office had no comments. And we did circulate this to all property owners within 120 meters. And the sign was posted on the property, as the clerk mentioned. So we did receive comments from CalConfer and and his partner Susan, and I will just read verbatim what was submitted for council's consideration. I will support the proposed change provided that the approved land use is designated exclusively for the operation of a seasonal overnight youth camp between May 1st and September 30th. The proposed zone change should not be a backdoor to other uses such as a hotel, criminal justice, or health facility, etc. The second point, the township extends municipal water services to the camp within 2 years to provide enhanced fire protection and safe potable water. The third point, the township reduces the speed limit to 40 kilometers per hour, installs a seasonal traffic calming devices, and relocates the trail from Presqu'île Road, a residential street, to Gray Road 1. This will provide enhanced safety for youth attendees as camp facilities exist on both sides of Presqu'île Road. The applicant and township, this is the fourth point, the applicant and township jointly pursue availability of natural gas to the area. So just in response to these comments, the institutional zone does permit a number of uses, including a daycare, nursing home, healthcare clinic, or hospital. But what we need to consider is that a change of use to one of those uses would require, obviously, the change of use permit, where we would be looking at a demonstration of servicing. So this area is privately serviced. It's on a shore well and septic system. So quite often, not only do you have to deal with licensing requirements, like for example, to put in a daycare or a nursing home, but you have to look at your servicing capacity as well. The area of the property has been reduced with the introduction of the realigned EP and EP special zone. So that does significantly decrease the amount of land available for development. But to Mr. Confer's point, there is an opportunity, if it's zoned institutional, should the property be sold, that it could someone could come forward and apply for a change of use permit or redevelop the lot. So in regards to clearly identifying that it's a day camp for children, we don't zone to regulate people. We zone to regulate the permitted use on the land. So if council would like to, in the amending bylaw, we can specifically identify the permitted use for the property. So the application, the camp has been in existence for 60 years, and similar to other businesses in the township, there's no need to regulate the operation of the camp. But if you want to specify that the permitted use for that property would be a private club, then we can specify that in the actual amending bylaw. The camp, in their application, they're not proposing a change of use of the lands. Actually, the indication, adding an addition to the kitchen is an indication that they want the use of that camp for children to continue. So with regards to the extension of water services to the camp and the surrounding area, so this area is actually outside of the settlement area boundaries, and there are no plans at this time to extend municipal water services to the area. The extension of natural gas, which was another point to the area, that actually requires the property owners to contact the natural gas providers and to make that request. That's not something that the township has ever specifically done. However, we make sure that when we approve a plan of subdivision, that the developers are moving forward and getting the appropriate utilities in place for the residents if they're available. The reduction to the speed limit is another point in Mr. Confer's comments. That's actually currently under review, as council is aware. I spoke to the director of operations, and he is aware of the request through these comments. So just that the comments related to the extension of water services, natural gas, and the reduction in the speed limit are not the responsibility of the applicant to address through this application. So just in conclusion, in the the planning report makes the recommendation to approve the application as it does comply with provincial policy, the county official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw. I'd be happy to answer any questions from council, and I believe that that Rob Robinson, who is the agent for the application, was intending to be on this call and would be available to answer questions as well. Thank you.
I am.
Thank you, Jen. I'll carry on with my script here. Chris Chin, 339708 Presqu'île Road, registered with the clerk to comment on the proposed application. Mr. Chin, if you're on the call, please go ahead.
Oh, I was actually just listening in. I haven't been to one of these before. I just enjoyed just informing myself. I'm sorry, I don't have a particularly prepared comments or anything.
That's fine. Well, welcome aboard anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to Agent Rob Robinson is present. Mr. Robinson, do you have any comments you wish to make?
No, I don't wish to add anything, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that members have.
Thank you, Rob. Madam Planner, you indicated that if council wished to put private club note on the bylaw, was that something you wanted direction on tonight or later?
I would ask council to give me that, to provide that direction this evening so that I could bring a bylaw forward to council for consideration next week.
Thank you. Comments from council? Do you wish to add that to the bylaw? Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our senior planner. Just a question. One of the comments in, I think, Mr. Confer's letter was about restricting the period of time through the year that it could be used. I'm just questioning, are there not some winter camps go down there for the kids periodically, like not constantly, but is there not a winter camp that happens there?
Rob, are you able to answer that question?
At the present time, the camp is generally not used during the winter season, but I guess I would be reluctant to preclude that in the future. I know it might be something that would be considered in the camp operation, and I'm not sure that there's a reason to preclude it.
Okay. Councillor Barfoot, I believe I've seen your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps it would be wise, that's a good question, Deputy Mayor. Perhaps it would be wise to wait until we get an answer on that question before we do anything. But I definitely agree with the comment of Mr. Confer that there should be some restrictions, that it can't be, it could change hands. We don't know. Let's protect everyone here. So I would suggest we postpone our decision making until the next meeting.
Okay. Councillor Sutherland, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I do agree that it should have a restriction on the usage of the property, just so that for future endeavors, if the camp is ever sold, that it doesn't change to different use. I don't agree about putting a time of use on there. This is a non-profit organization. There's hundreds of kids that get to enjoy this throughout the summer months. If there happen to be a couple weekends through the winter time, teaching the kids some winter skills for survival or whatever it might be, I think that'd be fantastic. I'm a little bit upset in the fact that it's taken so long to get through this for this organization, being that they are nonprofit, and I really hope that some of the fees have maybe been lowered because of what they have done for the community and the area over the years. So, you know, I'm looking to, you know, help these guys out and fully support them in all that we can do. I just, I think if we should, maybe should limit that property so that if it ever does get sold, that there's, you know, no other major issues arise from that, and we protect the neighbors and surrounding area from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. Mr. Robinson, do you care to comment on this statement if it's added to the bylaw, a private club? Do you care to comment on that?
I guess I'm a little confused as to. Let me state the objective of the club is to continue to use the property for a children's camp. If the private club designation allows that use, then I have no objection to it.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, I'm a little bit lost here. How do we give direction to the planner? Do we ask council to vote on whether or not they want to add the private club designation to the bylaw, or how do we handle this?
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, this is simply a public meeting. So if we want to add that amendment to the resolution to approve the application, which will be passed following this public meeting associated with the presented report, then we may do so at that time. But I would suggest that this public meeting is not the time to give direction to do so. We may add that to the motion following adjournment of this public meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think maybe Jen could just answer the last question there. It won't change the usage for the Rotary Club, so that they can still have a kids camp. I just want to make sure that the public knows that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, definitely the bylaw can be written in such a way to allow the use to continue, which is what the intent is. What it will specifically do is rezone it to an institutional use, but specify that a private club, which would permit the camp to operate as it is, would be the primary use or the exclusive use. And it wouldn't allow all of the other uses that are permitted in within that institutional zone.
Thank you, Jen. Does council have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, council will consider all the matters placed before it prior to submitting their comments to the applicant. May I call for an adjournment of this public meeting? Oh, Madam Clerk, or Madam, I'll get it right. Planner, your hand is up.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. There was no opportunity for anyone to speak in opposition to the application. And I'm just concerned that from a procedure perspective, that may then nullify any bylaw that we pass after this meeting.
Okay, I apologize for that. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to this applicant? Madam Clerk, does that cover the situation?
I would defer that to the planner.
Madam Planner?
Yes, if no one has come forward to provide oral comments in objection, then they cannot appeal the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Planner. So seeing none, may I call for an adjournment of this public meeting? Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Sullivan. A show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. So back to our regular agenda. We are down to, no, I have a recommendation to read. I was getting the eye from the clerk. It has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the county official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020. It is recommended that amendment report PL 2021-28 regarding rezoning application Z0719 and deeming bylaw for Rotary Club of Owen Sound Camp Presqu'île be received for information, and provided no further concerns are raised at the public meeting, it is recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application Z0719 and the correspondence deeming application for lands described as 339639 Presqu'île Road be approved. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Colburn. Is there any further discussion on this motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all, Madam Clerk, go ahead. This is where.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that this is where any amendments may be floored or tabled in regards to designating the use of the property as a private club or directing the planner to include that wording in the bylaw. So if that is council's wish, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to provide that direction.
Okay, I'm asking for a mover to add that verbiage to our, excuse me, motion here tonight. Do I have a mover on the motion? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any further discussion, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want for clarity to ensure that everyone knows what that amendment reads so they're clear on what they're voting on. So if I may, through your chair, I will add the line that is being added to this motion. So following the third line, we will add "and" that wording designating the primary use of the property as a private club be included in the approving bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. If council is aware of what to add on to our motion, we have a move and seconder of the amendment. So, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you for your help, Madam Clerk. We're down to delegations. We have none. We're down to correspondence. Our first set of correspondence is a petition by Mountain Lake Drive all-season maintenance. Director of Operations, Mr. Steve Dolmer, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Staff will review the petition for the winter maintenance on Mountain Lake Range Road there, and then we will bring back a report with our findings to council for further direction and information.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'll read the recommendation I have before me, and then I'll ask council if they have any questions on it. Correspondence item 6.1 regarding Mountain Lake Drive all-season maintenance be received for information, and that staff are hereby directed to prepare a report regarding all-season maintenance on Mountain Lake Drive for presentations at a future council meeting. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Barfoot. Does council have any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? The motion is carried. Down to our next correspondence, it's Old Mill Road and Hablot Street speed reduction. Director of Operations, Steve Elmer, would you want to speak to this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Staff have been receiving a lot of petitions and a lot of correspondence in regards to the speed limit on Old Mill Road and also Hemlock. We would like to do a full review of the said road to see what the speed limit should be out there for reductions or if increasement is required as per the two correspondent pieces that are in front of council today. So staff would like to bring back a report, but we'd like to have direction from council to say bring back a report, and then we can present a further council meeting or committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Does the committee have any questions on this piece of correspondence? Councillor Colburn?
Thank you, Mayor Burley, and through you to our staff. We're seeing more and more petitions and requests like this coming through to lower speed limits, and we seem to be dealing with them on a sort of case-by-case basis. I guess I'm wondering, does our municipality have a guiding document, a policy, or some kind of framework to make these decisions? I note that other municipalities do use such a policy that considers warrants or criteria such as for any particular area, what's the proximity to a school or a park? How wide is the road? Are there sidewalks? And so these warrants or list of criteria help the staff decide whether this is a spot where the speed limit should be reduced. And I just wonder if we could save ourselves some time and efficiencies if we don't have such a guiding document or a policy. I wonder if we need that, and that way that staff can apply the same set of criteria uniformly and consistently from neighborhood to neighborhood. I guess my question is, do we have one, and is that something that you would find maybe helpful? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Colburn. I had that very conversation with our Director of Operations, so now I'm going to let him comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Colburn. We are currently in the process of looking at doing a policy and a guiding document for these kind of reviews going forward. Right now, township staff are following the Transportation Association of Canada's guiding principles, TAC, as is referred to. We do have a document or a book that tells us how to look at what the engineering standards are for the road, the width, how many entrances come within the area, what's a community safety zone. And then we're looking at also potentially bringing a policy forward in a guiding document so that the Township of Georgian Bluffs has something that they can go forward with. But also we are looking at the 2022 budget for an overall comprehensive plan of the whole road network to look at all speed limits within the township as per our previous discussions, as per our level of service with our insurance company.
Thank you, Mr. Domer. Councilor Colburn, so you had a follow-up question?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for that. I think it's important that we be sort of forward thinking in this regard and have a process that's consistent. I also don't think, although petitions are important, I don't think that should be our sole criteria, the number of names on a petition. We don't know where folks live or if they fully understand the issue. And so I just want to make sure we're not just using petitions as a guiding principle to make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does council have any other comments before I read the motion before me? Now, I have a motion here. It says that correspondence item 6.2 regarding speed limits on Old Mill Road and Havelock Street be received for information, and staff are hereby directed to prepare a report regarding speed limits on Old Mill Road and Havelock Street for presentations at a future meeting. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Colburn, second by Councilor Pringle. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? See none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion. The motion is opposed. The motion is carried. Okay. Moving on with our agenda. We're down to Community School Alliance. Call for nominations for the 2021 nomination to Executive Committee. Madam Clerk, you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this correspondence was received to the Clerk's Department calling for nominations to the Community Schools Alliance in anticipation of some vacancies on that alliance. Now, according to my search through township records, we have been an active member of this alliance since 2015. Our former mayor, Alan Barfoot, was one of the creating members of this alliance and still currently sits on said alliance. So currently, from what I gather, Alan Barfoot is still the representative for Georgian Bluffs on this committee. However, Alan Barfoot no longer lives in Georgian Bluffs. So therefore, if we would like to select a nominee on behalf of Georgian Bluffs, this is our opportunity to do so. This is not a mandatory nomination. We simply have the opportunity to forward a nomination should we wish to do so. if I may be so bold, this may be a good opportunity to review our membership on the Alliance as well and determine if it's something that council wishes to continue with in considering these vacancies. I can say that we have not submitted any annual fees to this Alliance since we became a member in 2015. So there's a couple of unknowns here, but if council decides to forward a nomination, we have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would like to make a comment is that when this first started in 2015, there was a lot of controversy going about shutting down schools and so on in Grey and Bruce counties. And that was the main purpose of Alliance. The school in question was the Kilsyth School, which is now deleted, it's gone. The only school we have in Georgian Bluffs is the Campbell School. We've no other schools. So two things, I believe if we had a member, it should be from Georgian Bluffs, but I really don't think the purpose of this committee now is really necessary in Georgian Bluffs. That's just my thoughts. I don't know what the purpose of us being a member on this Alliance right now. And I open the floor up to comments from council. Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was actually going to be my question. What is the purpose of the Alliance, and is there a benefit for us? And does it have to be a member of council, or would it be better as a member of the community that might have an interest there? First, I guess I'd like to know what the purpose of the Alliance is.
Well, if I may, I did attend quite a few meetings with the former mayor on this topic, and the main purpose was to save closing of the schools, period. That's what the whole gist was, and to have a better communication with the school boards and so on and so forth. And I think we've passed that, and I just don't know what would come out of it, why we'd have to be a member, but that's entirely up to council. Councilor Colburn, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, just in reading their website, their goal states that they want to have some input into making smart decisions about school closures. I guess I would agree with the mayor's comments. If we haven't been active in a number of years and we haven't been paying dues, and certainly this is the first time hearing of this, it does make me wonder how useful this particular participation would be for us.
Thank you, Councilor Colburn. Madam Clerk, if council decides to opt out of this Alliance, is there anything saying that we can't revisit it at a future date?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And no, I don't believe so. In reading their constitution, I don't have that impression. But with that said, and not to create more work for the clerk, but however, this may be a good opportunity for me to really delve into what this Alliance wants to accomplish, what our participation on this Alliance will look like in the future by presenting a report for council's consideration. So it would be my recommendation that potentially we hold off on nominating a member to this Alliance until we can come to a decision about our continued participation. So that would be my recommendation, that I follow up with the Alliance, understand it a little bit more, and prepare a staff report for your consideration.
So since the motion has not been presented on the floor tonight, we can defer it with no problem.
So I would just, if I can, Mr. Mayor, I would like council to formally state that they do not wish to submit a nominee to the Community School Alliance at this point, and that staff are directed to investigate options to either discontinue or continue membership on the executive community and associated alliance by a report.
So, Madam Clerk, are you saying I should follow my direction and read this motion before me?
Yes, please.
Okay. But the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs does not wish to submit nominee to the Community School Alliance Executive Committee, and staff are hereby directed to investigate options to discontinue membership on the Executive Committee and Associated Alliance and prepare a report for consideration at a future council meeting. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Thompson, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any further discussion on the motion before us? Madam Clerk, does that address your concerns, this motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it does.
Okay. A show of hands, all in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Moving on to our agenda. Smithfield Grey Highlands Joint Police Service Board Submission Amendment Request. Madam Clerk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as council will recall, earlier in May and in early June, the Grey Bruce Detachment, OPP, being the OPP detachment, and all of the lower tier municipalities included in said detachment banded together to create a joint proposal to the Ministry of the Solicitor General due to changes to the Police Services Act. So as you'll recall, the province has amended the Police Services Act to amend the existing structures of police services board throughout Ontario. So all of the municipalities within the Grey Bruce detachment, including that of the Saugeen First Nation, all met and created a joint submission on behalf of the Grey Bruce detachment to create one large joint board to govern police services throughout the entirety of the detachment. Our joint proposal included one elected representative from each participating municipality and that of the Saugeen First Nation, as well as the required community appointees and provincial appointees. That was presented to council earlier in June and approved by both council and the Police Services Board. The joint proposal was accepted by all Grey Bruce municipalities with the exception of 2. Therefore, we had majority support. Grey Highlands was formally in support of the proposal that we did submit. So I submitted the proposal on June 7th on behalf of the Grey Bruce detachment. However, following my doing so, the Council of Grey Highlands moved to amend the proposal to essentially increase the size of the committee, which is what you're seeing here in front of you tonight. The Solicitor General requires majority support to amend the joint proposal that's already existing with the ministry. So should you decide to support this motion tonight, the overall size of the joint board will increase to approximately 20 to 24 people. Our joint proposal stands at 15. So I'm looking for direction from council if they wish to see that amendment be processed or if they wish to stick to supporting the original proposal that has been submitted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. As the chair of the Police Service Board for Georgian Bluffs, I will not support their amendment. I think we should stick to our original 15-member proposal. And Madam Clerk, have you had any direction or correspondence from any other municipalities seeing who supports this and who doesn't? And since it has to be a majority of you care to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I can only comment on behalf of the ones that I've received thus far, which is not a majority of the Grey Bruce detachment. I know that approximately 4 out of the 9 members at this point have not supported the amendment. So that would lead me to believe that if we do not support it, then it will not be a majority. However, not everyone has considered the amendment as of yet.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Comments from council? Well, Madam Clerk, I'm going to read the second motion put forward here and see if council considers it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Deputy Mayor Carlton has her hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Sue. Go ahead.
That's okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess when I'm reading that, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, I thought one of the things they were asking for was to have an alternate. So that wouldn't increase the size of the board. So there's different sections to what they're asking for here?
Madam Clerk?
I would see value in having an alternate to always have a representative there from our council. I think there would be value in that.
Yes, so thank you, Deputy Mayor Carlton, and through you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. There's essentially two separate portions to this amendment. So it would be my opinion that the alternate members can be built into the constitution of this joint board. Therefore, the joint board can determine whether or not they would like to appoint alternates to this committee. That can be done after it's created. The portion that we need to consider this evening is whether or not we would like to move forward with the additional community appointees. So in this amended model, each elected representative would also be paired with a community representative from the associated township or municipality. In the original proposal, that was not the case. Every municipality had one elected representative, and there would be 4 community appointees throughout the Greyburst detachment, as well as 3 provincial appointees. It was our intention to have those community appointees in different municipalities than the provincially appointed members, so as to ensure that there was a consistent representation of the entirety of the detachment on the joint board. So essentially what they're doing is they're looking to increase the size of the board by approximately 5 people.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go ahead, Councillor Colburn.
Yeah, I agree that an alternate is a good idea, but if that can be done after the fact, that's fine. I personally like the idea of having 4 more community members on this board. I think here's an opportunity. It's already a big board anyway, so probably another 4 bodies isn't going to make decision making more onerous. But here's an opportunity for us to have more citizen engagement in an aspect of their lives that they probably feel is pretty important. And so I personally don't have a problem with the additional community representatives. Just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Madam Clerk, I need direction. I have 2, option 1, option 2. Do I read both of them or do I read one of them?
So, Mr. Mayor, sorry, if I may, if you would like to make a motion, you cannot do so from the chair. So if you would like to move a motion and see if you have a seconder, you must vacate the chair first.
Okay, I'll vacate the chair. Deputy Mayor, would you take over the meeting, please?
Okay, yes, I will. So at this point, we're just looking for motions as to which direction we want to go. Mr. Mayor.
I would like to make the motion that we stick to our original makeup of the board, and we do not increase it.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sutherland? Okay, so Brittany, we go ahead and vote on this, or do we allow another motion to be put on the floor at this time? Okay, so all in favor of staying with the original composition of the board? I would say that's carried.
If I may, Deputy Mayor, if you could please call for all opposed.
All opposed, please.
Councillor
Okay.
Sutherland, you are muted.
I put my hand up for the first one, but it cut out. I didn't see anybody's hand go up.
Thank you.
I think I took that, Paul, as you were seconding the motion. So, okay. So that motion carries. So I can turn the chair back over to the mayor now. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Job well done. Okay, let's move on with our agenda then. Before I do that, Madam Clerk, you got your direction needed from that motion?
I did, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we're down to staff reports. The first recommendation is that report LEG 2021 Line Fences Act RSO 1990 be received for information, and that committee hereby supports exercising Section 98 of the Municipal Act 2001 to enact the Line Fence Act 1990 shall not apply in Georgian Bluffs and in its entirety with the exception of Section 20 of said act. And that a bylaw to authorize said authority be presented at the July 21st, 2021 meeting of council. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Pringle. Madam Clerk, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to briefly overview the report that you have in front of you this evening. So the Line Fences Act is a piece of legislation that has been around basically forever, as included in the report. So per this piece of legislation, the township, if we choose to continue with this legislation and the arbitration process associated with said act, we are required to appoint fence viewers to assist in the arbitration process between neighbors upon erecting or directly following erection of a line fence along their two properties. So we have, up until this point, participated in this legislation and appointed fence viewers to assist us in the arbitration process. According to what I can collect from township records, we have not processed a Line Fences Act application in 14 years. Now, that is only what I have been able to locate in township records. So at this point, I am seeking council's direction and whether or not they would like to continue appointing fence viewers and continue with this program, or if you would rather opt out of participating in this program, thereby creating or deeming disputes between neighbors in regards to line fences as a civil matter. Now, in doing so, should we opt for option 2, being to opt out of the Line Fences Act, our fence bylaw would then need to be updated to ensure that we have the appropriate procedures spoken to in our fence bylaw. Now, our fence bylaw is from 2007, so it does need to be updated either way. So pending council's direction this evening, we will either renew fence viewer appointments or we will move to opt out of the Line Fences Act as is included in the report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Lewis, I see you're on my screen. Did you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brittany's right on target there about the legislation being old and kind of redundant. It doesn't really help out much. Most of the complaints that we get in regards to fences deal with property line disputes. You know, the person's putting the fence over the line or whatever. Line Fences Act doesn't deal with that. The legislation was more towards when people were first homesteading, you know, and putting up fences and deciding whether somebody should share in the cost of that fence, or if there was a fence already there, whether they should share in the cost of repairing it. Okay. As soon as you have a property line dispute, or if you have a fence that somebody's already put up and they want the neighbor to help pay for it, it doesn't apply. You know, so it kind of becomes a useless piece of legislation from helping us out. So, and it involves us, you know, in a procedure that can get costly. And if the neighbors have a dispute between each other about the property line or the fence or anything like that, it should be their cost. I mean, quite frankly, okay? You're the one who's having the problem with the neighbor and you're the one who's having the problem with the fence. So, you know, go to civil court and sort it out. You know, it shouldn't be our legal costs. It's my opinion. So, and I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Mayor, to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm again having connectivity issues. Everybody seems to be frozen on my screen. to my knowledge, the Fence Viewers Act, like Mr. Lewis stated, it was originally started when everybody was first moving here and setting up line fences between their properties, but it's still there to maintain so that, you know, one person looks after their portion and the other person looks after their portion. The bigger issue we have now is one might have livestock and the other one doesn't. So the one that doesn't have livestock feels that they don't need to fix the fence. They might have cash crop or whatever it might be. So there has been an issue, and there was one raised. It was about 6 or 7 years ago out in Derby. I don't know if anybody else was familiar with that one that went down, but I still think we need to maintain it. It is a valuable tool, and it protects landowners, and like Tim said, it's more so for, I think, agricultural purposes as opposed to residential. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. Mr. Lewis, go ahead.
Sorry, there, I was trying to get unmuted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to Councillor Sutherland's comments, I always appreciate it when Councillor Sutherland speaks up. He usually has some, value added there. And believe me, I'm not trying to correct them, but in the past, that act has been used, as Mr. Sutherland says. The problem is that's a misuse of the act. Okay, the act does not speak to livestock, and it's not supposed to speak to livestock. And it's if you go back and review the case law on it, it's very clear that that's a different issue. That should be covered under the Municipal Act, which it is somewhat, and also is covered under, I think, something in there's some type of agricultural act that it's covered under. But that's where the livestock comes in, and it can still be dealt with, Councillor Sutherland, but it has to be dealt with in the the appropriate venue. And in the past, it's like a lot of things. Sometimes things get bent a little bit if nobody says anything, and I think that's probably what happened. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I cannot see any. Deputy Mayor Carlton, I believe your hand is up.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a question then, if there is an instance in an agricultural land that's not dealing with livestock, just simply dealing with placement of a fence between two properties, if we have changed our bylaws in this manner, where do people go? Does it automatically become a civil matter, or can they go to the province?
Madam Clerk, are you able to answer that?
Thank you.
Do you want me to? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we're proposing is that it becomes a civil matter, essentially. That's what we're proposing. Now, again, we're seeking council's feedback. So if council feels strongly that this Line Fences Act protects those of agricultural land uses, then we do have some flexibility in our opting in or our opting out. If we decide it does not have to apply to the entirety of Georgian Bluffs, we can apply it to agricultural uses and exempt, for example, settlement areas if we decide not to. As Tim has stated, it's mainly used in rural areas rather than those areas of settlements or of residential development. So we do have some options if council feels strongly that this is a safeguard for our farmer community.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tim, comments?
I'm just going to suggest this, Mr. Mayor. It may be helpful if, and I'm just suggesting this was put off, and I could come to council and actually explain how that act works. And then they could make a decision from there. So they're making an informed decision. And but that's up to you guys. I'm offering to do that if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Comments from council? Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate Tim's last comment. I think yeah, I'm feeling like I know less about the Line Fences Act the more we talk. So I feel like if he were to come forward, that would certainly help us to make a good informed decision.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Sutherland, I believe I've seen your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say the same thing. That would be very helpful if Mr. Lewis would do that for us.
Okay, that's thanks very much for offering that, Tim. Councillor Bradford, go ahead. You're muted, Carol.
Thank you, Tim. That's a good idea. I know I'm sort of lost in the wilderness here. And yes, we were involved in a Line Fences Act a number of years ago. The deputy mayor will remember that. So that would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm going to turn it over to you for comments, and how do you want to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it sounds like there's a general consensus to defer this report and the associated recommendation until we can provide more details regarding the Line Fences Act. And if that is in fact the case, I would ask for a mover and a seconder for a motion to defer this item.
Okay, I'm moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Councillor Thompson, that we deferred this item for future report. If there's no other discussion, a show of hands, all in favor of that deferring. The motion has been deferred. Councillor Sutherland, I see your hands up. Oh, okay, sorry. I'll catch on. Okay, so we'll move on for agenda. We're down to the land acknowledgement statement. I'll read the recommendation that report LEG 2021-22 land acknowledgement statement be received, and that committee hereby supports the proposed land acknowledgement statement as indicated in this report, and that the policy amend 04-2021 land acknowledgement statement is hereby approved. Someone to move put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlson. It's I thought it was a well done statement, and I was quite impressed with it, Madam Clerk. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report was born out of direction from council previously given to myself earlier this year. So after receiving that direction, I did consult with our neighboring municipalities, Grace Harbor Conservation Authority, and our neighboring First Nations communities as well. So the statement that you see in front of you this evening is born out of lots of consultation. And as far as at the time of writing this report, everyone was happy with this statement, given that it did, it takes bits and pieces from all those involved, including those former and existing communities that are surrounding the Township of Georgian Bluffs, and also those that were formerly inhabitants of the Township of Georgian Bluffs. So along with this land statement, I have included a land statement use policy to help us govern as to when we use it and when the appropriate time and spaces are to use this land acknowledgement statement, specifically being council and committee meetings, as well as any special events or any other events that are determined to be appropriate by the chair, CAO, and clerk. And with that, I would welcome any feedback regarding the proposed statement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I assume that it's a great statement, and I assume the mayor would read it at the beginning of every meeting, or possibly a chair of a committee meeting if necessary. And I assume that we'll have a week or so the mayor can practice the proper verbiage of how to say the acknowledgement. Am I making myself clear?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. That will be the case. So as this is a meeting of committee of the whole, the recommendations passed here this evening are not ratified until next week at council. So therefore, the land acknowledgement statement will not begin to be implemented until August.
Okay, thank you for that. Any comments from council? Deputy Mayor Carlson.
I would just like to commend staff on that. I think it's a great statement, And while it's wordier than some others I've seen, I think it includes everything. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I thought it was well done, especially as the mayor can read it comfortably. I thought it was well done. And it's a very important document that we start using. Mr. CEO, is there any comments from you on this item that you want to speak as the CEO of Georgian Bluffs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of our clerk. I think she went over and above. She really tried to communicate with all the stakeholders, really invited a lot of input, and it is really the result is a statement. It was a very collaborative effort and one that appears to sort of recognize everyone, and everyone seems to be very supportive of the statement and what we're proposing here in Georgian Bluffs. And I think this is something we should be very proud of starting in August.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. If there's no other comments from council, all in favor of the motion to show of hands, please. There, okay, it's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on with our agenda. Our next recommendation is that the report LEG 2021-23 Council Remuneration Committee be received, and that the committee hereby supports establishing of the 2022-2026 Council Remuneration Committee, and that the draft terms of reference for said committee attached hereby as Appendix B are hereby approved, and that a bylaw to establish the committee adopt the terms of reference and formalize citizen appointments be presented at the July 21st, 2021 meeting of the council. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Pringle, second by Councilor Colburn. Is there any, Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as per the existing council remuneration policy, council and staff are required to call and form the council remuneration committee in the year prior to the next regular election, which, as you'll all recall, is 2022. So therefore, it is time for us to call this committee once again to reevaluate and revamp council remuneration policies to govern the next term of council, being 2022 to 2026. Now, this report does have to be presented and adopted by council prior to opening of nominations next year, which will happen in May. So I have generally used the same skeleton that we did in our former term, being the 2018 to 2022 Council Remuneration Committee. I have added some clarity regarding meeting procedures, public notice procedures, etc. I was hopeful to have a larger committee this time around. However, we did a round of advertisements at the beginning of June, which lasted a month. We only received 2 applications within that timeline, so we extended it another 2 weeks. We did not receive anything else. However, today I did receive notification from an interested party to form a part of this committee. Therefore, we now have 3 members, which is ideal considering we do like to have an odd number of participants on committee meetings. So another important thing to highlight is we have received some feedback regarding the orientation provided at the beginning of this term. We do intend to work that portion, being updating the orientation package into this committee through various interviews with each of you, both as a general counsel as well as individual members. So we will be reevaluating that procedure as well. In the past, the treasurer and myself have provided support to this committee. I will, of course, be doing the administrative portions, but the Treasury Department is involved to help streamline payment procedures and etc. So it is my intention to present the applications for council's consideration next week in closed session for formal appointment following your consideration of the applications received thus far. So all we're doing tonight is looking at the terms of reference and getting the committee established for formal establishment and appointment of citizen committee members next week.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Comments or questions from council? Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear we had a third person step up, Brittany, for sure. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I know that the advertisement stated that we paid a per diem. I wonder if we need to specify in our advertising what that per diem is. I wonder if that's the carrot that folks need perhaps to step up and make sure that the time that they're giving is, they're adequately compensated for that. Does the policy state what the per diem is? I'm not sure that I saw it in there. It does. Okay. So perhaps that should be included in the advertising, or would that be seen as inappropriate? Just a suggestion.
Madam Clerk?
I mean, we can definitely, so Councillor Coburn, from what I'm gathering is you'd like to see that advertisement process extended and that, oh no, so just for future, including the per diem amounts in, okay, following. Yes, I mean, we can definitely look at that. I will say that we have had difficulty appointing members to this board in the past. In 2018, we had a lot of difficulties appointing people to this committee, and in 2018, they weren't paid. So I kind of understand that. But yes, in the future, if we find that we're having difficulties, we can definitely include the per diem or at least consider including the per diems.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Deputy Mayor Carlton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One comment I'd like to make with the last committee, and I don't think this was the committee members' fault at all, but each of council were given a time limit of 10 minutes to speak to the committee, and I'd like to see that extended. You couldn't get enough information and answer enough questions for them in that 10-minute period, and I think many of us were perhaps a little disappointed with the outcomes from that one. I think we'd like to see more input from council and not limit council members to a specific time length. I think we can all have some valuable input there to ensure that councils going forward are properly reimbursed and that we attract a good level of councillors and a good number of council members. It doesn't hurt to have a really good election going forward. So just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments from council? Madam Clerk, any other comments from the Clerk's Department?
No, just in response to Deputy Mayor Carlton's comments, absolutely. I've heard you. We will look at incorporating a more comprehensive consultation with council, especially given that we're looking at updating our orientation package or procedures as well. So we will look at extending that period from 10 minutes and potentially not even including a time limit at all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If there's no other comments or questions from council, all in favor of the motion before us, a show of hands. The motion is carried. Moving on for agenda, we're down to operations. I have a motion before me that staff report OPS 2021-31 entitled Drinking Water System Financial Plan be received for information purposes, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs Drinking Water System Financial Plan 083-301A as attached is hereby approved, and that staff are hereby directed to forward the Township of Georgian Bluffs Drinking Water System Financial Plan 0883-301A to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Ministry of Environment as required, and the staff are directed to schedule a public meeting with the users of the East Linton, Shell Lake, Potawatomi water systems regarding the proposed changes as outlined in the attached DWS financial plan and report back to council following the public meeting on next steps. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Pringle. Mr. Dolmar, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. The township retained Ontario Clean Water Agency to provide the update to the financial plan for the township's drinking water systems. This is to comply with the financial plan regulation, Ontario Regulation 453/07, made underneath the Safe Drinking Water Act. The financial plan was prepared for each of the township's drinking water systems, so that would be Oxenden, East Linton, Potawatomi, and Shallow Lake. The information was supplied by township staff, including future capital and major maintenance projects, water system financial information, as well as tangible capital asset information that the township generated in accordance with the Public Sector Accounting Board PSAB standards PS 3150 requirements. This information was also to generate an operating plan that forecasted future annual expenditures requirements from 2021 to 2027. A revenue plan relying on the user's fees was generated to support the expenditure requirements outlined in the operating plan. The information generated in the operating and revenue plans, along with the tangible capital asset information, was used to develop the financial plan for the township's drinking water systems, covering the study period from 2021 to 2027 in accordance with the Ontario Regulation 453/07 requirements for the minimum of 6-year study. With this review that Aqua also provide, they are also looking at doing a review of when they did the financial stand. They did a review of how we were looking to move towards more of a user pay system approach versus lump sum approach. This would allow staff to be consistent with the billing process that we're currently using in Oxenden, and encourage conversation with the other 3 drinking water systems. Staff will be conducting this public meeting in September 2021, and then we'll be following back to council with the results of that public meeting and next steps on how we would look to implement the new changes as per the financial plan. So this is a requirement that's required every 5 to 6 years that needs to be updated, and we are looking for council to adopt it today so that we can continue on with our drinking water systems as part of the requirements of the Drinking Act.
Thank you, Mr. Dolmar. Questions of council? Councilor Thompson, did you have your hand up? No. See no questions. A show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? The motion is carried. Okay, moving on for our agenda. Our next recommendation in operations is that the tender RFT 2021-08 road reconstruction of concession 7 between Gray Road 16 and Side Road 3 be hereby awarded to Harold Southern Construction at the tender price of $228,565.50, excluding HST, to be completed by October 1, 2021. And whereas RFT 2021-08 has exceeded the budget amount of $225,000, that the additional $3,565.50 be funded from the roads construction reserve. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Move. Deputy Mayor Carlton, you have a question first?
Yeah, you skipped over the water billing. So do you want to go back to water billing and then move on and read all that again?
I guess if you want to follow the agenda, yes, we will. I apologize. It's awful. I thought it was perfect. Okay, I'll go back on the agenda then in order. That the Committee of the Whole received staff report OPS 2021-32 entitled Water Billing Relief Request 515 Princess Street, and the staff be directed to apply a credit of $1,306.65 to the account of 519 Princess Street as per policy ENV 00816 Water Billing Relief. Did someone want to move to put that on the floor? Deputy Mayor Carlton? Councilor Thompson? Mr. Dolmar? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, staff received a request for water billing relief for 515 Princess Street. In January, just a quick brief history here. In January 2016, council approved a policy in regards to water billing relief to be used when considering applications from residents requesting financial relief from their water bill on a one-time only basis where a plumbing malfunction has occurred. So at this property, we had staff attend this location. They did find out that there was a little bit of a plumbing malfunction, and then this resident has requested for some water relief. The repairs have been fixed, and also another repair was noted to be fixed as well that was contributing to another portion of another leak. At that time, staff reviewed the water data again, found out that all leaks have been fixed at this location, and are trying to be consistent of what have been approved by previous council reports as well. So we're trying to be consistent across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Dolmer. Any questions on this motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Can we just replay the tape for this next motion, or no? I'll read it again. That tender RFT 2021-08 road construction of concession 7 between Gray Road 16 and Side Road 3 be hereby awarded to Harold Sutherland Construction at the tender price of $228,565.50, excluding HST, to be completed by October 1st, 2021. And whereas RFT 2021-08 has exceeded the budget amount of $225,000, that the additional $3,565.50 be funded from the roads construction reserve. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Pringle. Mr. Dolmer, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Staff recently put out a tender as per our budget request for redoing concession 7 from Gray Road 16 to Side Road 3. This road segment is actually seeing a lot of traffic increase from the aggregate pit that's located within that area. We are looking to do a proper pulverization, base stabilization, clean up the shoulders, add roughly 3 inches of material and do asphalt on this segment of road and make it part of our haul route process, so that when they are doing removing of materials from their pit, that they have a road that is actually standard for them to drive up and down on.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from council? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? The motion is carried. Moving on to planning. I have a recommendation here. It is recommended that report PL 2021-29 official plan update RFP award be received, and that J.L. Richardson and Associates Limited be retained at the cost of $39,953 plus HST to update the official plan for the Township of Georgian Bluffs. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Councillor Thompson. Madam Planner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report's fairly straightforward. I'm seeking council's approval to effectively retain J.L. Richardson Associates to help us update the official plan. We received two proposals, and they were within our budget, and they have demonstrated that both companies that provided us with proposals are definitely capable of helping us with this project, but because J.L. Richards is within the budget, I'm recommending that the council support hiring them through this RFP process, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jen. I do not have my screen open up. Can you tell me, is there a time frame on this update?
Yes. So we're anticipating completion by fall of 2022.
Really? Questions from council? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? The motion is carried. Moving on to our agenda, we're down to our next recommendation. that report PL 2021-30, amendment to PL 2021-17 cannabis policy be received, and that committee support deferring the creation of policy related to cannabis production, processing, and a nuisance bylaw that address associated odor and lighting issues pending completion of the following. 1, provincial approval of the new land use capability guidelines. 2, conclusion of the Health Canada consulting on cannabis. 3, the enforcement of Leamington Bylaw 3518 is determined by the Ontario Supreme Court of Justice. And 4, a decision has been rendered on appeals to the Leamington Light Abatement Bylaw 7920. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Barfoot. Madam Planner, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in February, Council directed staff to develop a nuisance bylaw to address odor and lighting issues associated with marijuana grow operations, and to develop a report with recommendations for amendments to the existing zoning bylaw and official plan to aim to prohibit the development of new cannabis facilities within residential areas of the municipality. So in April, our student planner, Maria Godova, presented a report to Council speaking about cannabis policy as it would impact the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and she provided some recommendations in that report. This summer, we have a planning student, Ikra, who is actually working on researching some of the surrounding municipalities and the zone provisions that they have for her 8-week work term, and we're looking to include some of that language in our official plan as well as our zoning bylaw. Additionally, with the consultants now being on board to move our official plan forward, the update forward, they will also be looking at policy to include in the official plan, which is specific to our settlement areas, to address and regulate cannabis within our settlement areas. So in moving forward with Council's direction as well, I was looking at the different municipalities and the bylaws that they have, and the procedures and the policies and the regulations and the staff required to implement all of this. And what I came across was that right now there's a number of policy and document reviews occurring at federal and provincial levels, as well as there's also active appeals in process challenging bylaws that are attempting to regulate cannabis operations, and I've noted that in the report. So, for example, the municipality of Leamington in September will be before the Ontario court, and to determine whether or not the bylaw, their cannabis regulation bylaw can be enforced. So we also see that at the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board, there are appeals against the light abatement bylaws that were approved by Leamington as well as the town of Kingsville. The report's also showing that Health Canada is in the process of conducting consultations to look at the existing permissions for microclass and nursery licensing regimes. So that consultation has closed, but they haven't produced any sort of report to summarize the findings of that consultation. And there's also a consultation right now for guidance on personal production of cannabis for medical purposes. So that's something that that would impact our settlement areas as well. That consultation is still active. It closed in May, and we're still waiting for them to produce a report of the summary findings of that consultation. The province of Ontario too is updating the land use compatibility guideline, and so that's an important document as well, because what it's doing is it's going to help define setback distances for more of the more intense industrial uses. So they do list cannabis as a Class 5 facility, and they're recognizing that it does cause a lot of conflict to the surrounding area. So we want to be sure that we're not putting in policies in our documents, in our zoning. We're not incorporating setbacks that are less than what this document guideline is going to require. I did, and I'm going to share my screen if that's all right. I did reach out to the county, and I had the I had the GIS technician help with a map so that I could show council. Can everyone see that?
We can now, yes.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is, I'm just going to zoom out, but not too much. This is a map of the township. And what I asked Carolyn at the county to do was provide us with layers that show the township. So there's an area. Can you see my cursor, the mouse moving?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so that is that land there that's in like the light peach color. That is the Niagara Escarpment. So our policies won't apply to any sort of use within that area, and it does take up a substantial chunk of the northern part of the township. The area that you see here in the gold, I asked Carolyn to provide us with a 500-meter setback from the boundary of all of our settlement areas, all of our inland lake and shoreline designations, or the designations under the county official plan, as well as a 500-meter setback from all of our boundaries, administrative boundaries, so that, as an example to show where, when we're looking at, setback distances where, for example, if we're allowing a cannabis operation to operate, where they'd have to effectively locate. The area in green is the significant wetlands. So with that designation, there's also a 120-meter no development setback from those wetlands. So what it's doing is with these setbacks, it's decreasing the amount of area available for example, for a cannabis operation to establish and to operate. So that's one of the tools that we could use to direct development to appropriate locations in the township. Sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Right. So those separation or those guidelines are important in helping us to be able to direct the development to where it's appropriate to go, and to keep it away from our settlement areas. We do have an option to designate our settlement areas as sensitive land uses, and help control the location of cannabis operations should they decide to operate in the township. We do have in the county official plan, it does support, it does recognize cannabis operation as a as an agricultural use. So the growing of the product is an agricultural use. However, it defers to the township to determine about processing and cultivation. So those are areas where we would be able to implement provisions in accordance with what the province is saying that we can do. So we can't, if the province and the federal government are permitting the use, we can't prohibit that, but we can have guidelines to direct it to an appropriate area. So my council didn't set a date for when this needed to be done, but I wanted to provide you with an update about what I'm finding, and just bring it to your attention, and ask for your support in deferring any sort of policy creation or zoning creation of zoning provisions until those key pieces of those key documents are there's a decision granted on them. That's going to provide staff with more direction on what we can and cannot do, and that will help me to bring forward better policy and bylaws for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. A question before I go to Deputy Mayor Carlton, Madam Planner. Are you familiar with this bylaw that Leamington has before the courts? Does it apply, the verbiage in there, does it apply to Georgian Bluffs?
The bylaw can definitely be modified to fit Georgian Bluffs. So they address retail sales. Well, as council knows, there's no retail sales of cannabis permitted in Georgian Bluffs because council passed that. Council doesn't support it, and I believe it was a motion, passed the motion back in 2019. So that would be edited from the document, and then it would be tailored like we do with other bylaws. It would be tailored to meet the needs of Georgian Bluffs.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Deputy Mayor Carlton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm quite supportive of deferring this and making it part of the official plan or whatever it is that staff needs to get more information together on it. One of the questions I have, and I'm not sure if anybody can answer, and maybe it has no relevance at all, but I took it that part of the issue is the light being emitted from these greenhouses that's affecting the neighborhood around. And I thought somewhere in one of our bylaws, we have a dark sky light policy that would force all lighting to stay down. So is there any way to ensure that they have to cover those greenhouses so that that light doesn't emit out all around? Or is that not what part of this is about?
Yes. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, the light abatement bylaw looks at requiring like not shades, sorry, curtains. So, and then also to requiring that the lights are turned off between certain hours of the night. One of the things that the study was finding is that it's altering the like the nocturnal habits. So for any animal that's active at night, it's disrupting their patterns. So, and in Leamington, you know, if you look through their website, it's pretty impressive. The you know, like the number of greenhouses that they have there. That they show pictures in some of the staff reports, as well as on the different websites and the news, the media, and the amount of light that's emitted at night is incredible. So it lights up the sky, and you can see it from, you know, from 2 towns over. So it's pretty significant. So the once we hear back on the decisions on those, it's going to better help inform the decisions that that council can make on regulating the use, so that everyone can that we can have some balance. It's important to realize that you know, economic development is important in a rural community, and we don't technically want to, you know, shut down opportunity for growth and investment. There are, as you see in Leamington, there are greenhouse operations that they're operating within the required guidelines, and there's not an issue with every single one. So we need to remember to approach this with a balance, so that everyone can benefit.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Is there any other questions from council? Councilor Barfa, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. I have been following this situation probably for a couple of years now. And one fear that I have, I just lived through with people. There was a farm. The owner sold the farm because they wanted to retire. but they severed the house and some acreage off. Whoever bought the acreage chose to raise marijuana. These people who spent the retirement funds on the house so that they could live peacefully in the country was their dream. Well, now, with marijuana growing right over the line fence, 150 feet from their bedroom, what do you think their house is worth? I was a realtor for years, and I wouldn't even venture to put a price on it. With that growing there, this has been going on for probably a couple of years, to the point where I've, phoned everybody I knew. I talked to Alec Ruff. Nobody can deal with it. Tim is probably aware of it, if he's still on the line. But if we don't watch what we're doing, and Jen, I know, and it's a good report, but my fear is this happening again. And what I would like to do, Jen, is take you for a drive someday, because it's not too far away. What I would like to do is extend the distance or the setback. In the report, it says residential property. I don't think it applies to residential property only. These people do not live in a settlement area. They live on what was left of a farm. So there has to be some way that we can sort of change that around. Like in the fourth paragraph, we already have legal, I understand it's legal because I sort of researched that a little bit too, legal growing in residential area, and the neighbors are complaining about that. So I feel that we're avoiding the issue. I'm sorry, until Health Canada decides that they're going to do something, we're hung out to dry. The light abatement is one thing, but if you can't go outside in your own yard and breathe good, clean air, that's something else. If what your neighbor does devaluates your property, and Al, you belong to area, tell me that's not true. A farm will devalue. If you've got manure smell all the time, what do you think this is going to do? I spoke to a counselor from Leamington a couple of years ago at a conference, and he was telling me, he said, they're euchred because what happens, the zoning is all right on a lot of these properties. They're zoned agricultural, so you can't, growing marijuana is agricultural. So you can't use that as an excuse. Zoning is not right. Zoning is there for a farm. I know Leamington area extremely well, born and raised there. There's greenhouses on our old farm, but they're not growing marijuana, thank heavens. But we have to extend it that it protects some of our rural people as well. And any day you're in the office, Jen, I'd like to come in and share some of my notes with you because I have extensive notes. I've been researching this for almost 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barfoot, for your great comments. And I'm quite sure I can see the planner shaking her head, taking notes herself. Does council have any other questions on this motion before us? It's the deferral motion at this time. Seeing none, I'm going to ask a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us. The motion is carried. Oh, Councilor Sullivan, sorry. Oh, okay. I'll catch on. Sorry. Public question for you, Madam Clerk. Did any member of the public register for questions tonight? Seeing none?
They did not, no.
Thank you. Unfinished business, a verbal report from Township CAO, Mr. Meneses. Go ahead, Al.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I will be brief. Two items that we were asked to provide an update on for council. The first one was the Wyerton Campbell International Airport and where we're at with that. So council will recall that we had a special council meeting on June the 23rd, At that meeting, council received the consultant's feasibility study on the future of the airport and listened to a presentation and were afforded the opportunity to ask questions of the consultant. On June the 24th, the same consultant presented the feasibility study at the county council, and staff at the county presented a report that, amongst other recommendations, included that the county make an annual contribution of approximately $175,000 a year for 2 years towards airport operational costs, while staff at both the county and the township worked towards identifying and solidifying private sector interest in the continued operations of the airport and development of the significant employment lands surrounding the airport. That decision was to be finalized and approved during the 2022 budget deliberations at the county. County Council, after significant debate and deliberation, decided to defer a decision and asked county staff to return at a later date. It was also clear that the financial contribution portion of the report became an issue with some county councillors. As of today's date, the timeline for a return of the county report and a decision on the topic had yet to be finalized. But as such, and as directed by our council, Georgian Bluffs staff have begun writing a report summarizing potential options for council's consideration. The options will explore the pros and cons of each option, and council will then be able to make an informed decision and direct staff accordingly. The staff report on the future of the airport is scheduled to return to council this September, and in the meantime, staff will continue to explore options and validate all of the information that is available to us. Any questions before I move over to the next update?
Councillor Colbert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to our CAO. One particular aspect of the county council meeting, the discussion seemed to be around where is Bruce County in this equation? Why have they been approached? Has there been some official discussion with them? And I do believe, if I recall correctly, that was built into the motion to defer, that there would be talks with, in particular, Bruce County and South Bruce, the Township of South Bruce Peninsula. So I know that you probably can't comment on necessarily where where Grey County is at with those talks and discussions, but I wonder if you could give us an update of discussions that our staff or councillors have had, or council has had, if any, with Bruce County to date. Because of the geographical location of the airport, I think I understood the sense from the Grey County meeting was that given that Bruce County is in much closer proximity to the airport, they would be an important partner. So I guess I'm just asking, and I think the public perhaps would like to know, is have they been approached? What is their sense? Will there be a presentation made at Bruce County Council, and what's that timeline look like? Thank you.
Al, are you able to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so I've had some preliminary discussions with the CAO of South Bruce Peninsula, and we've been talking about specific options and their desire. I can tell you that I've been informed that the county staff have had multiple discussions with staff at Bruce County as well. And so I can tell you, based on my discussions to date and everything that I've heard, is that there seems to be support for the continuation of the airport being open. Now, does that surprise anyone? I don't think so, because everyone realizes that that's likely a benefit to the community. I guess the more important question, I think, Councillor Colburn, what you're kind of leading to is there any support for a financial contribution to the operation of that airport? And I can tell you that to date, I have not had a flat out no, but what I've had is the following. Basically, what I've been told is that before anyone comes asking for some financial contribution or financial support, Georgian Bluffs needs to make a decision on the future of the airport itself. Is this an asset that you want to keep open? Is this an asset that you want to promote? Is this something that you're going to be supportive of? And I can tell you the discussions that I've had with the private sector are equally sort of the same feedback is, you know, it's difficult to get a lot of interest if your council isn't behind this. And so it's kind of a bit of a challenge right now, but to answer your question, from a staff's perspective, there have been discussions. There is going to be continued discussions, and that will be included in my report to council that will come in September. My intent is to hopefully have something in writing that will also give council some sort of assurances in terms of where that support is and what that all means, so that council can make an informed decision. In terms of whether on a political level there's been discussions, I will defer to the council members here, and they can certainly provide answer if they've had any discussions on a political level.
But before I go to you, Councillor Colburn, I must say I have reached out to the mayor of South Bruce Peninsula, which so happens to be the warden of Bruce County, and I asked them if they would start discussions with our CAO concerning the airport, to do with services and other things like that. And I believe they have started that process with our CAO and other people. And other than that, I have stayed out of it. Now, Councillor Colbert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So specifically through you, Mayor, to our CAO, specifically, I guess I'm asking, has Lumex have our staff asked to do that presentation that was done for Grey County and for Bruce County? I'm confused as to why we would have that presentation for Grey and not for Bruce.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would, I don't want to answer for Lumex, but I would say the following, that I think they presented it to the individuals who paid for the study, and that was the county and ourselves. I can tell you that when we were having discussions with Lumex, it was a topic for consideration in terms of when they would be presenting to Bruce County as well. I'm not sure whether Grey County is still having those discussions with Lumex or not. I personally have not had a discussion with Lumex since they've presented it, as we are still sort of trying to synthesize the information in those recommendations. But if it's something that council would like us to do, I can certainly reach out to Lumex and see exactly if they're planning on doing the presentation to Bruce County as well.
Thank you. So yeah, what I heard loud and clear at Grey County Council was they need to be part of the discussion before many of the folks around the Grey County Council table would entertain considering being part of the equation as well. So it seems to me that that would be the logical next step. Thank you. Thank you,
Councillor Colburn. Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I'm a bit concerned because I kind of feel like we're still hearing the same thing. So, 7 or 8, well, not 7 or 8 years and years ago when we bought this, we were talking to people who said, "Oh, we think this is a great idea. You should keep it going. Like, this is a really big asset. Cobble Beach is behind you. I mean, way behind you, but behind you." And, the First Nations said, "This is a great thing. Yeah, we support you." And I think we've had a really hard time articulating to people that well wishes are appreciated, but they don't really get it done for us. And I think we have to have a look and say, are we being patted on the head here and offered platitudes, or are we talking to people who are potential partners? And partners mean, yes, we're in. So I'm concerned when we say we're reaching out to partners, and partners are saying, well, it's hard to get invested because we don't know where the council stands or if the council supports it. Like, my message would be, are we behind it? I guess we're behind it insofar that we're going to keep it going until we can hand it to somebody else, period. Period. So if people are saying, it's hard to know if you're behind it or not. Ongoing, no, we're not behind it. We're not. I mean, that's just my opinion, but we're not behind it. We're a really small municipality, and financially, we can't afford to operate this and subsidize for potential partners. So I'm just kind of, I know I'm going way overboard the other way, but I just feel like we just keep kicking this can down the road, and people saying, well, look, if we give them, I'm making this up, but if we give them $100,000, or if we offer them well wishes, or if we tell them, hey, we might be interested if you keep getting behind this and subsidizing it, I just think we're really getting near the point where we've got to make a tough decision and say in or out. And I don't see people lining up to say, we're in this with you, or we want to take this over. Like, I know my tone is negative. I just feel like we continue to get platitudes and pats on the head.
Good comments, Councillor Thompson. Mr. CEO, go ahead. Reply.
If I may, Councillor Thompson, I couldn't agree more. I think council, at the end of the day, I think we need to do a bit of self-reflection as a council and say, so we've been talking about this for years, and I think previous councils have been talking about it. This current council has been talking about it. But when we talk about what we've actually done to try to make it a viable operation, and part of what I see is the following, that to me, the operation of an airport is one thing. The employment developable lands around the airport is really where the focus needs to be, and sort of the assessment growth potential that's there. So I would say the following, and I couldn't agree more. I think a status quo option is certainly not an option. I think expecting, to sit back and wait for someone to come knock on our door and say, hey, yeah, we've heard about all this potential, we want to get in on this, isn't something that we want to do. So I would say that I'm hoping the direction from council in September, when the report comes back to council, the direction to staff is going to be, all right, we're going to pick a lane here, and the lane is going to be the following. Either we're going to put it up for sale and try to sell it, and if we can't sell it, we're going to shut it down, period, end of story, or we're going to say, we're going to take 6 months or 9 months or whatever that time frame is going to be, and we're going to challenge staff to go out there and actually get a deal done in regards to a developer to come develop these employment lands, take over the airport, whatever all that looks like, and you're going to have a bunch of permutations and combinations in between there with all these options. But I couldn't agree more. I don't think the status quo is anything that anyone would recommend to this council, nor would I think this council wants a status quo. I think this council is demanding a decision being made before this fall and saying, here's the road we're going to take. Now, staff, you've got your marching orders, go out and get it done.
Thank you, Al, and good comments. You want to, excuse me, Councillor Thompson, you have a follow-up before I go to Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, thank you, and sorry, Councillor Sutherland, I'll be as brief as I can be. I think if people say to us, what have you done, or are you behind this, or how, my answer to them would be, we launched into this to secure single ownership to try and keep this going. At the time, we knew we couldn't run this, but we knew it was something that was critical for our community, and we would try and keep it going. So what's our investment been? I don't know. Is it 2.5 million? Is it 3 million? I don't know the numbers we've spent over the years to keep this going at a state that it's at right now. And that is a serviceable international airport that's valuable to the community that we need to get out of. We've offered sweetheart lease deals. We've renovated the property to get people in there. So people have told us, if you put a restaurant there, people are going to come like crazy. Well, I can tell you, I camped at the Wyerton campground for the last week. People were not flying in to use the restaurant. And so, I mean, we have tried our level best, and we have followed everyone's directions. We've bought every bag of magic beans, and hopefully, somebody's going to come and say, we know about how to run an airport, and we appreciate you keeping this going. And those magic beans will grow. So, I think we have an answer for people who say, what have you done?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I agree 100% what you're saying. Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I agree with Councillor Thompson and Mr. CAO. We've got to make a tough decision. We've tried. We really did. We've given it a go. You know, we stepped out on a limb. We made a big purchase. We've tried to run it. It's just been a tough go. There's been a few avenues we've tried that we thought might go really well. Like Councillor Thompson said, magic beans. The unfortunate part is, I look at this. If this was a private enterprise, nobody would run it this way. So there must be somebody out there that's willing to spend the money and get it operational. So I think we need to have that discussion. I look forward to Mr. CAO's report, or staff's report, coming in September.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any comments, Mr. CAO?
No, no comments really, Mr. Mayor, but the only thing I would ask for council to sort of put in the back of your minds as we prepare for our debate in September on the future of this topic is, I'm going to ask, and it'll be through the report, that council really consider two aspects of this. One is the actual physical operation of an airport and what we've done to try to maintain it and try to sort of get it to sort of a break-even point. And then the other is really the portion of the lands that are developable as employment lands, and ask yourself what we've done to try to sort of accelerate that and develop that. And I think your answers, if you separate those questions, might be a little bit different in terms of what you've done for one versus the other. But I don't want to sort of guide that discussion now, but it's just something that I would ask you to prepare for in terms of your mind, in terms of what we've done as trying to promote those employment lands and trying to develop what is now, you know, and what the county will tell you is one of the top economic development opportunities in all of Grey County. And so I would just ask you to keep that in mind, that I see this as really a two sort of pronged issue here. One is the continued operations and the operating deficit of that airport. And the second one is really that golden nugget, not only for Georgian Bluffs, but the county in whole, is that those development opportunities and those two industrial parks that can be created as part of that prosperity hub, and what that would mean not only to Georgian Bluffs, but to the overall region. And that's the only thing I would say.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. CEO. Look forward to these reports coming back September, and hopefully you're able to find a bag of magic beans before then to make it come in a good direction. Now, Mr. CEO, I believe you had another item you wanted to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the second item that I was asked to sort of provide an update on was the Campbell Mountain Trail, and specifically the temporary closure of that trail. So council will recall that a decision was made months ago to temporarily close the Campbell Mountain Trail to motorized vehicle traffic, while staff undertook a review of various items, including obtaining a legal opinion on the situation. Staff also started the process of developing a township-wide active transportation plan that includes a review of all of our trails and defining allowable uses on those trails. Staff have recently received the legal opinion concerning the temporary closure, and amongst other things, it concluded the following: that the township is only able to regulate the use of off-road vehicles in areas that are governed by the NEC if such regulation would not conflict with the Niagara Escarpment Plan. This is because the NEC is a provincially established body that has been given the higher authority over such matters within the area of its jurisdiction, i.e., no matter what we'd like to do, the NEC's policies and plan would be paramount. Staff have continued to work in the meantime, identifying the various trails and possible routes around the township to accommodate the various user groups wanting to enjoy the outdoors. Staff have recently hired a GIS resource that is currently completing the various mapping layers required to clearly identify possible trails and routes and allowable uses on those routes as per applicable legislation. Working with all of our public sector partners, our original target of July 30th to complete that mapping remains on target. Staff are expecting to conduct community engagement meetings in late August, once all the mapping is completed, to engage all of our stakeholders throughout the community and allow input into our proposed plans. Once all that community input has been received, staff will then return to council with a comprehensive plan and recommendation for council's consideration later this year, and we're currently targeting a September council meeting for that update. In the meantime, staff continue to monitor the situation at all of our trails and can continue to deal with various activity, including, in some instances, gates and barricades being displaced, erecting signage to help inform and educate the public, asking our third-party bylaw enforcement officers to take position at various entranceways to prohibited activity on trails, and educating those who are trying to attempt to access those trails, and trying to take a much more proactive enforcement stance. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for the update, Mr. CAO. Right at the very start there, you'd said that the township cannot govern NEC lands or part of their plan. So does that mean, so we've blocked that off? So does that's technically mean we're governing it? So I wanted some clarity on that, and then I would wonder if after Mr. CAO commented, I could have another opportunity.
Certainly. Go ahead, Al.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. So yes, we have put some barricades up. Basically what the legal opinion states is that we cannot allow or sort of condone or make any policies that would contradict the NEC policy. So it's clear, specific in regards to the Campbell Mountain Trail, and we did have some on-site visits and meetings with stakeholders, including NEC staff, right on the trail earlier this a few weeks ago. And it was clear the following, and the legal opinion clearly gives us clear definition on this. That specific parcel on that trail is on the NEC's land, its highest protected area, and as such, motorized vehicles other than snowmobiles in the wintertime is strictly prohibited. The legal opinion does also tell us, and we will share this with council when the report comes back, also tells us that really the enforcement of that legislation lies with the NEC. However, if we know that this illegal activity is happening and it's happening through our unopened road allowance, we have an obligation or a duty to try to prevent and educate that activity from happening. And that's why we've put the barricades up and the signage informing the users that off-road vehicles is a prohibited use through that trail. And that's why we've put the barricades up and the signage.
Thank you, Al. Councillor Sutherland, go ahead. Do you have another comment, question?
I did, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. CAO, for answering that. Mr. CAO had mentioned that there was also some damaged gates or barricades that have been installed. He might be referring to the one that I contacted him about, as I was contacted about a farmer, and it's at Parkhead off of the highway on the rail line that heads east towards Shallow Lake. So it was brought to my attention by a local farmer that has farmland back in there. And he, for 50 years, him and his family have accessed the back half of their farm via the rail line, because there's a creek that comes from Shallow Lake he said it's about 6 feet deep with water in it. So I talked through to Mr. CAO and to the Director of Operations a couple times about this matter. And I just wanted council to be aware that there was a cement post put in the ground and then a steel barricade a steel gate barricade was put on there to prevent farm equipment from accessing this. I took this call. I took it very personally. I said that I wouldn't stop because this is not right. That we cannot just stop farmers from accessing their land. This is their right. They're here to, we're here to feed the cities and look after us, and here we are trying to stop them. So I was very upset in the fact that this was done. This was not brought forward to council. Council was unaware of this. The gate was removed. It was removed by another party. I believe my conversations, it was mud trucks or something like that had removed it, but that was dealt with. So I hope that we're not going to reinstall this gate and block this access for these. There's 4 farms there. I've looked at aerial maps and I've talked to a couple of them now. So I just want the rest of council to be aware of that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sutherland. Any comments, Mr. CEO?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Councilor Sutherland, I was not referring to that incident, but I will just say in generality that that's part of what we're looking at is in terms of, you know, we need to define all of these trails. We need to make sure that we define the allowable uses on those trails, and then we're going to have to sort of educate and make aware in circumstances that you're talking about. I know that we're looking further into that. I understand and I can sympathize and empathize with the farmer's plight. I think in that particular situation, you know, there might be specific issues where you've got some large heavy equipment going through a heavily pedestrian friendly and sort of cycle trails and things of that sort. So we're looking at all of that. I was not referring to that incident. I was referring in general to the Campbell Mountain Trail, and some of the barricades that had been installed there had also been tampered with and sort of lifted, including the concrete posts where they were cemented in. We continue to enforce it. We continue to erect the barriers and try to do our best we can. But these are sort of a comprehensive issue. And I think the issue you brought up sort of speaks to why we need sort of a township-wide approach to this, identifying all of the trails, all of those possible areas, and then clearly delineating exactly what uses are going to be allowed, and then starting an education and awareness campaign and eventually an enforcement campaign as well. So, but thank you very much for bringing that up.
Thanks, Hal. Councilor Colburn, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, through you to our CAO, I'm happy to hear that we're taking a more comprehensive approach to this. It seems to me that we've gone on for quite a few years with a bit of a patchwork system where we look at these incidences as one-offs. And the danger in that approach is that rules aren't applied consistently. And then we do get upset folks in our community because things have been let go for so long. So I'm happy to hear a comprehensive plan is coming forward. That said, this council commissioned a legal opinion, and I understand that it's in, and I suspect it has been for a couple of weeks at least. I'm wondering why council hasn't had an opportunity to look at that legal opinion. I don't know that it's appropriate for us to wait until September. I think at the earliest is what you're saying. Is there any way that we can take a look at that legal opinion and have you write up a report just specific to that particular legal opinion? We asked for that mostly in regards to the Campbell Trail issue, Campbell Mountain Trail, and I just feel like it's a loose end, and I, for one, would like to see the legal opinion on that sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Colburn. Al, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, if council would like to see the opinion sooner, we can certainly make that available. I mean, it is council. Council did direct us to get that opinion. We are happy to share it. The idea was just we would bring it back as comprehensive to really close the issue that was the Campbell Mountain. But if it's council's desire and you'd like to see that opinion sooner, we can certainly schedule it as soon as next week in closed session, and we can share that with council for sure.
Thank you, Alan. I would agree with Councilor Colburn. I think if at all possible, we should have it at our next council meeting in camera so we can have an opportunity to look at. Okay. If there's no other updates, Mr. CEO, I'll continue on with our agenda. Okay. We're down, no, this shouldn't take very long. We're down to new business. Update from Deputy Mayor Carlton about the municipal code of conduct. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carlton, for attending the seminar on behalf of the township and providing such detailed notes. So go ahead and give us your notes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was quite an interesting kind of webinar to take part in. And what I tried to capture in my notes were sort of the gist of what everybody said. So some of those things got said 20 times because this was open to one member for each of the 444 municipalities in Ontario. So it was quite a loaded webinar. What we can do is we still have the option to submit some suggestions of our own if we would like to. They have to be in tomorrow though. So one of the biggest things that came out kind of consistently was that a lot of people felt instead of each municipality hiring their own integrity commissioners, that the provincial government should have a core group of integrity commissioners that we call upon on a rotating basis so that all comments, complaints, questions get answered by someone on a rotating basis in a timely manner. It was also felt that there should be a provincial judge overseeing all of this so that where right now the integrity commissioner comes back and they make their report to council, but council is the one who has to make the determination, is there going to be a penalty? And a lot of these councils felt they're small councils. They don't want to be the ones to say, I'm penalizing my peer for something. So the report comes back and kind of falls flat and doesn't go anywhere. Whereas if there were a provincial judge in place that were in charge of doing that, then it takes the onus off the local council members to penalize each other. I'm kind of going over some of my notes here, sorry. Another comment was that there should be a record kept of these complaints. And keeping in mind, this isn't just council members. Complaints can go into the integrity commissioner from staff members and from residents. And a couple of communities were finding they were having some residents put in a continuum of complaints about a specific councillor or two or three and undermined their ability to operate as a council. And with no record being made of these kind of frivolous and vexatious comments being made on an ongoing basis, there's nothing to go back on. So it was felt that there should be a record of these comments kept on file that gets referenced and that carries over from term to term. You don't start the next term with a clean slate and start doing the same thing again. Another concern was about the invoicing model and that the invoice just comes into the township, but it doesn't say, was this a staff member put it in? Was it a councillor? Was it a resident? We just get an invoice and we pay it. So it was felt that maybe it should say, and it doesn't have to name names anywhere, just say councillor requested information regarding conflict of interest. Resident put in complaint about councillor, and maybe not even say what the complaint was about or anything, but just so that we would have a way of knowing where it's coming from. So if you're in a municipality that's got residents who are making constant complaints, is that something that council needs to be dealing with, to look into that and go a little further with it? It was also strongly suggested that there be a lot better education and training of all of council and senior staff at the beginning of each term. One person actually made the comment that in a lot of other industries or businesses, you have to have an accreditation of sorts to be able to be in business. And it was felt that as councillors, maybe there should be sort of a test or an exam that we have to take part in order to be on council, not just get voted in so anybody gets voted in on council, but be able to actually pass the test that says, yes, I understand what lane I'm to be in at all times and that type of thing. And that if somebody chooses not to do that, they don't get to stay on council. So that was a suggestion. One person made it and others kind of echoed it and said that they really liked it. So we do still have the opportunity to put in comments to the ministry by tomorrow. And I don't know if council has any questions for me or would like to see something submitted on our behalf, or so I'll leave it to the rest of council now.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You hit the nail on the head for one thing that always annoys me. I sign the checks in the municipality, and when I get an invoice coming in from Integrity Commission, it doesn't say what is for or nothing. It's just an open blank. Here's a check, so I sign it. Any other bill that comes in the municipality, we have a record of what is for, something to justify it. But there's nothing to justify it other than it coming from the Integrity Commission. I don't think that's right. I'm not saying that they should divulge the information about it, but there should be some reference to why it came into the municipality. We don't want to give the Integrity Commission, there's an open slate, say, oh, we haven't billed Georgian Bluffs for a couple of months. Let's throw a bill out to them. Like, and I'm being a little bit funny that way, but it's just that that's always annoyed me, that it's an open ticket for just to send a bill to the municipality. Me as the mayor and the treasurer, we sign the bills and the check goes out. I don't think that's right.
That was brought up. The accountability of it was felt strongly by people, that how do we hold them accountable? They're attempting to hold us accountable, but it has to work both ways.
Thank you. I see Councillor Coburn, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not so sure, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the rest of council, how I feel about asking for information that could potentially identify an individual based on the context. I think that's probably a surefire way of discouraging people from talking to the Integrity Commissioner, and that's certainly not something that we want to stifle. My two comments are a little different, though. I have always been perplexed by our system of integrity commissioners in Ontario, in that we pay them to turn around and often police us. It seems like an inherent conflict of interest, and it must be difficult for them to then bite the hand that feeds. I think it should operate more like the Ombudsman system does, where there is one at a provincial level where we're not paying them directly. So that's the one comment I have to make. And in terms of the similar system, having one across the board, or a body of ICs across the board in Ontario, that will eliminate a lot of the inconsistencies that we see from municipality to municipality. There are a lot of gray areas, obviously, to issues that pertain to integrity. And so when you get a mishmash of different ICs spattered throughout the province, you're going to get concepts applied differently. And that doesn't make sense to me either, when our codes of conduct should be very, very similar. Thank you.
I agree with your comments, Councillor Coburn, good comments. And I in no way was trying to imply that for me to sign the check of the mayor of the municipality, I should know what's going on. That's not what I was implying. All I was trying to imply is that there should be some way, when that invoice comes in, what it was for. A councillor concern or whatever, just very vague without giving any information, but it's just an open blanket, and I don't think that's fair. And I agree 100% what you're suggesting and what the deputy mayor has said, but I really feel it should be a provincial appointed integrity commissioners. And we call, when we have a concern, we call into a number or whatever, and the province gives the next integrity commissioner that's in line to take the call and follow it through that way. I agree 100% with that. Deputy Mayor Carlton, go ahead.
Okay, I'd just like to reiterate, the idea wasn't to point it out to it being Councillor so-and-so or resident so-and-so, but just to say resident had issue with, or staff member lodged a complaint, or councillor inquired about a situation, not to pinpoint who or what or anything, just to give an idea of what it was for, that it wasn't just, I don't know, I guess the feeling was there was no accountability. How do we know they don't just send us a bill for $500 every month? Because there's nothing that says what's the background basis of that. So I think that was kind of the feeling all around on that. The other idea of that core group of integrity commissioners at the provincial level that we all call on, so then you don't get even personality conflicts within, you know, we've hired our integrity commissioners, but they're butting heads with one of our counselors, and that counselor has legitimate complaints, but isn't getting heard. So it was felt that you wouldn't get that type of thing at the provincial level. The other thing was, and I'm glad you made the comment about equalizing it across the province, It was also felt that the code of conduct should be a provincial code of conduct so that everybody's isn't a little different. So those are some of the comments that we could actually ask staff to submit for tomorrow. I know that's a short deadline, but just worked out the way of me getting my report in and then the timing of everything. So that's kind of where I'm leaving it. Would council like to have some comments submitted to I think it's Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for tomorrow?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Madam Clerk, this was put on by the Deputy Mayor. It's not for me, but were you able to give comments on this matter tomorrow, is what the Deputy Mayor is saying? If you and her were to have conversations and she had the input at the seminar and what you've heard here tonight from council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I am prepared to submit that following the meeting if council is in favor of us doing so. And my basically summarizing the conversation we've had here, indicating support for, just for example, the provincially appointed integrity commissioners and the roster of said integrity commissioners, as well as increased accountability measures. My notes reflect the third one that we just talked about, but yes. I have them all written down, I promise.
Councillor Pringle, go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of thought into my head, there's a solution to not really naming names or putting people in the spot or whatever, but they could even just include the date and time. That way you have a reference number on the time, what time the call came in, if we ever had to go back or however that works. But date and the time, nobody's involved, and you got something to go by. Just to comment.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Madam Clerk, are you comfortable with putting the conversations together and what council are suggesting you to do for your comments tomorrow?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I will take all of the discussions we've had here, create formal correspondence for submission to the province and submit it. I will forward the correspondence that I submit to council for their information. And if I may, if I could just have a show of hands indicating that direction to myself, just for the record and for clarity.
All in favor, show of hands, please. It's a motion is carried. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that report. It was a good report, and it was nice to see you weren't sleeping, you were listening. Thank you. So let's move on for our agenda. We're down to notice of motion. Does any council member have any notice of motion they want to present? Seeing none, we have no closed session here tonight. Our next meeting will be council on July 21st, 2021 at 5 o'clock. If we have no other business here tonight, I look for the motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlson, second by Councillor Barfoot. Is there anyone in favor of adjournment? Show of hands, please.